Welcome everyone to our webinar, our early childhood education webinar, where we are introducing our new unit, hot off the press, Life on the Farm. So we're thrilled that you could join us today, and we hope that you are able to get a lot out of this experience. I'm going to tell you who is going to be presenting today. We have 3 different presenters. I'm Mandy Bottoms. I'm the curriculum coordinator at California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. And in my role there, I get to coordinate all of the development of curriculum. We get to work with teachers and industry professionals as we write and create new curriculum to share with teachers. And I'm joined today by Molly Wong, who is a TK educator. She's been doing pre-K, TK, and even kindergarten for 21 years. So she partnered with us to develop the new curriculum, and she was really instrumental in making sure that the activities were fun and developmentally appropriate. And so we're really thankful for her help, and she'll be joining us today. And then we also have Martha Deichler. Martha is a longtime Ag in the Classroom board member, and also was a former teacher, principal, superintendent from Borrego Springs Unified School District. So we're actually going to be going over to Borrego Springs in a little bit, and Martha and her daughter Casey, who's a teacher there, are going to be sharing some of the music that accompanies the unit. So you will get to meet all of us today. The next question is, first we're going to do our housekeeping. There's a few things to go over that's unique to a webinar. So you all are muted and your videos are off, so you didn't have to do your hair before you got on today, which is great. The Q&A is open. So down at the bottom, you should see a place to add your questions. We will answer those questions halfway through the webinar. So if you have them, get them in early and we will answer them. If you get them in later, that's fine too. We have people who will be manning that and they can respond by typing. We will break briefly at the halfway mark, and the webinar is being recorded. If you miss any part of it, don't worry, we will email it out to you early next week, along with a link to download the unit. And then finally, and perhaps one of the more important things, stay until the end of the webinar. We are giving out some really wonderful prizes for your classrooms to enjoy, and we would hate for you to miss it. So we want to know who we're giving those prizes to. So if you could take a minute and rename or make sure the right name is displayed on your Zoom account, that would be wonderful, because we will use those names to send you your prizes. So check that. Next, I want to share with you, if you enjoy this webinar and maybe you have a school garden at your site, we also have a school garden webinar coming up on Tuesday, May 16th from 4 to 6 p.m. That will be a partnership with Master Gardeners, with a school down in Southern California that's doing some pretty neat things. There will be a school garden tour, and then we will be sharing our curriculum related to school garden. So you can scan the QR code or go to learnaboutab.org and find the school garden webinar there. So who are we? We're California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. If this is your first time experiencing something that we've done, welcome. Our main goal is to help teachers educate youth about agriculture and how it impacts their everyday lives. We think the ag provides a wonderful context for helping kids understand the world around them, and we get to do that a number of different ways. One of the ways, and I alluded to this earlier, is by developing resources for teachers. So we put resources in the hands of teachers, and then they can go back to their classrooms and make sure that their students are getting accurate and teacher tested materials that are high quality. And we're really proud of the work we do there. But we also provide different programs and inspiration for teachers and training opportunities like this one. So we want to make sure that teachers have all the tools that they need to incorporate agriculture. And then finally, another fun part of the job is we get to recognize and celebrate teachers and students for their achievements. And we have a number of programs that does that. Okay, so why are we here? Hopefully you kind of know this already, but in case you're not sure why you're here, Ag in the Classroom, it had received some funding from the National Agriculture in the Classroom organization to develop a new curriculum called Life on the Farm. And the inspiration behind this curriculum came from the idea that as we educate, especially the youngest learners, about agriculture, sometimes in an effort to really simplify the idea about where food comes from, we changed the way it looks. So all of you know Old MacDonald had a farm, but the truth is that there aren't that many farms that look like Old MacDonald's farms that have a pig and a horse and a goat. Most farms have gotten bigger in the modern world. They might have farmers that specialize in growing one certain crop or one certain type of crop, like row crops or orchards. So farming looks pretty different. There's still some farms that look like that, but most modern farms look a little bit different, although they're still typically owned by families. So it's a global marketplace now, and the way farms look has really changed. So we thought, we can teach early childhood children about that, and we will do it. So we wrote this curriculum to help you introduce the concept of farms in an accurate and age-appropriate way. And then the last thing is, as you all know, we have lots of new TK teachers coming into the world, and we want to provide them with the materials that they need to, as an incoming teacher, to teach TK, kindergarten, and pre-K all about farms and agriculture. This is a brief overview of the curriculum. Basically, the design is that there's 4 multidisciplinary learning experiences every day that follows a daily theme. And the daily themes are going down on the left-hand side of the screen for each day. That kind of builds upon each other. And all of the activities are focused on specific learning goals that reinforce all of those age-appropriate, the knowledge that they need to have at that age and skills. And so we're going to get to share some of these activities with you today. What today is going to look like is Molly and I will be walking you through the curriculum day by day and showing you the different resources and activities, and hopefully helping you gain the confidence that you need to take this free resource that we're going to give you and to take it back to your classroom and to have the confidence to implement it and do it successfully. So that's our goal today. The big question for day one is, what are some different types of farms? And so each of the activities throughout the day helps students to realize that there are a lot of different types. There's dairy farms and egg farms and beef cattle farms. So what are the different types of farms? And we start the day and each day with a read aloud. And so the recommended book for this day is called All Kinds of Farms by Daniel Shepard. And it introduces students to the idea that most farms will grow one type of commodity or produce one product. And then, and it looks very different. So there's like I said, egg farms and dairy farms. So they read that. And then each day we also include vocabulary development cards. So after you're done reading your book with the students, there's some different cards that would be key to today's lesson. So there's a few here: harvesting, weather, grain. And what I love that we included some discussion questions for you, because I know as teachers, sometimes you're like, oh man, I have to do that again. So there's a number of ideas for what you can discuss, asking students to connect the learning to their real life or their own lives. So what types of grains do you like to eat? What grains do you eat at breakfast? Which ones do you eat at lunch? So there's different questions that can go with those cards. There's also a song on the first day, but I am not going to sing it for you. Martha and Casey will be joining us shortly, and they will sing the song to introduce all kinds of farms. The next activity, the literacy activity, is called Crop Letter Match. And this is a fun activity that utilizes any of those sensory bins that you have in the classroom already. So for the one that we did, we used rainbow rice, and inside the rainbow rice, you add your magnetic letters. And you add these little crop cards that are included in the unit. And I laminated mine so I can use them again. So what students will do, it's like a little bit of a treasure hunt inside the sensory bin. They're going to try to find a crop card and look at that first letter of the word, and they're going to find the matching alphabet magnet. And then once they do, they will record what they found by coloring in the letter on the worksheet. So each one can have this, or they can work in groups. So that's a way that they can get introduced to the commodities that are grown in California. There's more than 400 different commodities. So not all of them are featured in this activity, but there are a lot. So the next activity, once they do the literacy, is our math activity for the day. The math activity is an interactive reader, which I'm sure many of you already use in your classrooms, but this one focuses on counting different crops grown in California. So it's pretty simple, but it reinforces all of those early learning skills, the idea of using a 10 frame, and then there's a commodity to the side, and they can practice tracing their numbers, sight words, and then the word of the numbers of the numeral. So they can move through those. There's vegetables, fruits, and nuts in this one. So that is the Counting Crops Interactive Reader. And then finally, there's an activity called Where Does My Burger Come From? Most students like hamburgers. They might not like all the things on them, but most of them can create a hamburger that they will like, whether it's a veggie burger or a traditional burger. And so in this activity, it comes with a handout where students are going to see all the different parts of a burger. And I've done this activity with students before, and it's really fun because a lot of these things will look at this and they'll be like, what is that? Oh, it's pickles. So what are pickles? Where do they come from? A lot of kids are like, I don't know. What are pickles? I eat them, but I don't know what they are. So you can tell them they're actually cucumbers. And where do cucumbers come from? And you can actually question, move back through the processing. And the answer is all of these things come from a farm, even ketchup, even mayonnaise. So they all come from a farm. So after you're able to chat about that with your students, maybe you do it as they're building it, they're going to cut out the pieces and create their own burger and talk about how farmers allowed them to have all the parts, from the meat to the pickles, even to the bun. So that's a fun way to get conversation going in your classroom about all different kinds of farms and how we get many, many different kinds of food from agriculture. So that wraps up day one. Now we get to transition to our, I guess, a musical interlude. We're going to go all the way down to Borrego Springs, California, where Martha and Casey are in Casey's classroom, and they're going to be sharing with us the first song that goes with the unit, which is called On the Farm.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to be singing On the Farm. You play a musical instrument, it's very easy. Just C and G to the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. You ready? Sing along with us. We can't hear you, but I'm sure you'll do great. Ready?
Yes, sorry.
What's growing on the trees? Just look around the ranch. Walnuts, almonds, pistachios, nuts on every branch. What's growing in the field? Just look at what I found. Lettuce, peppers, broccoli, growing from the ground. What's growing on the trees? Just look around the ranch. Pears, oranges, nectarines, fruit on every branch. What's living in the barn near the stacks of hay? Sheep, cattle, or some goats, livestock eat all day. What's growing on the vines? Just look around the ranch. Grapes, kiwis, blackberries, fruit on every branch.
Good job.
Hi, everybody. I'm Molly. Nice to have everyone here. So I'm going to be talking about day 2, which is life on the farm. And we've got some really cool games. We've got some really cool games and art activities to do, which will be awesome. The first thing that we have is our book, which is called Farm Animals. And this is a really neat book that goes over so many different farm animals. Chickens, there's cows, there's sheep. There's so many different kinds of farm animals in here. And that goes with our vocabulary development cards. So we have, as you can see, we have dairy. This is a really good one to talk to everyone, all of your students about. That dairy it comes from cows. I can't have dairy. However, everybody will ask me if I can have eggs. And I say, no, dairy comes from cows. And so I can't have anything with milk. So this is a great chance for you to talk to your students about how dairy comes from cows, things like cow milk, cheese, the chocolate milk that's in the cafeteria, yogurt, those things all come from cows. We also have crops right here. You can talk, and you can talk about all of the different crops that farmers might produce. There's sheep, poultry, pigs, and beef cattle. So the story or the book, it's nonfiction, so it's great. And it goes over all these different types of things that you can talk about with your class. After that, so that would be your circle time. And then beyond that, one of the things that you would do is you would talk with your class about how there are different products that come from each of the animals. And we have many cards. Okay, I'm going to have to get my computer. I'm going to switch it to our cards here. And hopefully you'll be able to see it. All right. So what you can do is you can put these up on the board and you can talk to the children. You could maybe put the animal cards up top and then pass out the smaller cards, the product cards, and have them raise their hands and say, ooh, let me push these up. Got drumsticks and chicken nuggets. All right, who thinks, or you call on your student who has a drumstick and you say, oh, where do you think the drumstick comes from? Does it come from the turkey or the cow or the chicken? There's all of those different opportunities that you can talk with your class about those items. So it's a fun little game that you can play. All right, next. We have a very fun activity, Play-Doh stamp mats. So I know you all have Play-Doh in your classroom. This is great for fine motor. So what you do is you have them make little balls out of their Play-Doh, and then they can put it down on the table and squish it into a circle. So they always love squishing the Play-Doh. And then we have these really neat cards. So we've got the animal name on here, pig, all the different animals. I'm going to go with this, and hopefully in your classroom, you have some of these alphabet stampers. These are great. If you don't already have them, ask for them from your parents or use up some of your money, your classroom money, because they're definitely worth it. And so the children will collect the correct letters that go with it, and then they can spell out the word. So we've got P-I and G, and that goes with pig. All right. Next. Oh, okay. The next thing we have is a fun cooperative game called Feeding Time. And this has little cards. So we work on a number recognition and counting with this game. We've got these are commodities that you would have on the farm. So we've got some grains, hay, corn. And so those are some crops that are used that will help feed the animals. And then we have some animals. So we have a cow and a chicken, a sheep, and a pig. And what you do is you need a cup, and you could do this in partners. And so the partners get one cup and they get 20 Unifix cubes, and you put the Unifix cubes, you put 10 Unifix cubes inside. So they're counting to 10 as they're putting them in. And then they have 10 off to the side, not in the cup. And then the students will take turns choosing a card. So we have a nice pile of cards, and here we go. If it is a seed, or if it's a grain or the corn, if it's one of the crops, what they do is they're going to add to the bucket or to the barrel. So I got, you maybe can see, I got a number 2. And so I'm going to put in 2 cubes, 1, 2. And if I were to happen, let's say, so that would be my turn, and then my partner would go next, and uh-oh, I got an animal. And so that means the animal is going to eat some of what's in the bucket or in the barrel. So there's number 1. So we have to take out 1. Now it's a cooperative game, so there's no winners or losers, and you can really emphasize that they're working together, and their goal is to hopefully keep enough food in here to feed all of their animals. And so when they're done, once they go through all of the animals, then they can count how many cubes they ended up with. You could do, there's a variety of things that you could do once they're all finished. So there's that. And then finally, we have a project called Cowhide Art, and you want to let the children know that the farmers who raise cattle for meat, they often use the whole entire animal. So they don't just use the meat, but they also use the cowhide for things like leather belts or leather shoes, things like that, purses. And so this, it gives you a chance to talk about how farmers use the whole animal, not just parts of it. And then we can have some fun. So you would just use your tempera paints. You'd need some pipettes or droppers, and you'll put it out on the table. It's ideally done with trays. You want to do it in a tray so that, it gets a little messy. So hopefully you guys are all good with messes, as we have to be. And this is, what they're going to do. And they're just going to pick up the paint with their pipette, and they're going to squirt it on, and they can drag the pipette around and make lines and, make it all really cool looking. So if it gets too wet and goopy, you would just want to dab it with paper towels before you put it on your drying rack. And then you could hang it up, and you could talk about all of the things that the cows are used for. All right, so we have a really cool video it's all about sheep. And so we went to a sheep farm, and we get to learn a little bit about all the sheep. So here we go.
My name is Elisa Noble, and I own Millertown Sheep Farm here in Auburn, California. And as you can hear, we have assistance with this video today. So this lamb's mom is out here somewhere, and so they're talking to each other. This lamb's about 2 weeks old. Everybody out here, all the babies, there's 41 babies, and they're somewhere between 3 weeks old and 3 days old. We want to make sure they have plenty of food to meet their nutritional needs. So as you can see, we have them on pasture here. Our particular farm is entirely pasture based. This is Mindy. Come here, Min. Good girl. Mindy is a Great Pyrenees. That's her breed. She's a livestock guardian dog, and so she protects the sheep, especially the little ones, from coyotes, mountain lions, bears, any predators. So we just saw some of the mama sheep with lots of wool on, And that's really good in the winter when it's raining and cold. It's like they're wearing 10 wool blankets. Even if they're really wet, you can part their wool and their skin will be dry. So it's naturally moisture repellent. But now it's getting warm and it's going to be really warm. So they're starting to pant and breathe faster. And so in about 3 to 4 weeks is when we shear them every year. So the end of April, beginning of May, when it's starting to get warm, is a perfect time to shear them so that they have no wool throughout most of the summer, and then they're regrowing their wool in the fall so that they have their winter coat again. Shearing is when we essentially give the sheep a haircut. So we use a pair of shears just like you would for your brother to get a buzz cut, and shear that wool off of them. It doesn't hurt and it really helps them be more comfortable during the summer. This is what it looks like once we shear it off. Okay, this is just the raw wool. You'll see there's stickers in here, there's some dirt. This is straight off of the sheep. You'll also notice that it's soft, and that is because of the lanolin that's in the wool. And it's kind of a greasy substance, if you will, and actually once it's processed, part of that lanolin is what goes to lotions and other products that we use to keep our hands soft. We take the raw wool to somebody who owns a little mill, and they wash it and clean it, and first they turn it into, this is called roving. People use this to stuff pillows or anything like that. But it's also the step before spinning it into yarn. And then once you have yarn, you can make anything, right? So here's an example of 2 things that a friend of mine made from our wool. So these are just some really nice wool socks and a real nice beanie. We also use the sheep to make meat, which are things like a leg of lamb that folks may have just had for Easter, or loin chops, or shanks, or things of that nature.
All right, that was a fun little field trip. I actually got to take my preschool age daughter with us out to Elisa's farm, and she had a great time. So I hope that your students could also enjoy going to a real sheep farm and seeing some of the products that come from sheep, and learning about some of the byproducts too. I love that Elisa talked about the lanolin in the wool and how that can be used for lotion. So another opportunity, we are going to not only share, we've had a few questions about where you can get the curriculum. At the end, we will everything we do is free. So we will share the curriculum at the end, and then we will also included inside the curriculum is a QR code that will link you to that video, and then the other video that we'll show later on today. So hope you enjoy those. Okay, I think we're on to day 3 already. So day 3 has a focus on what is the focus? Okay, crops grow. That's what the focus is. So how do crops grow? And it introduces the idea of orchards and fields and how you might find different crops in those 2 different places. So it starts with a read aloud. Gail Gibbons is a very well-known author for her nonfiction texts that are really interesting for kids. And I especially love all the ones about how produce gets from the farm to the plate. And this one's no different. It's called Apples. And why this book was a perfect fit. It only talks about orchards, but what I really like about this book is that it also talks about pollination. So it's a great introduction. A lot of our crops, even field crops, require pollination for fruit and vegetables to develop. So it's a great opportunity to introduce students to that idea. And then we have our photo cards, just like with all the units that show orchards and different stages of production. It shows how things are transported. That's a tomato track, where it ends up in the end. And then also field crops. Some crops grow in fields in rows. So, and then the activity that goes with the circle time for that day is you can copy this anchor chart onto an easel pad, And the students will draw, or you can write their ideas. I had students come up and draw what they would find in orchards. They would draw up in the trees, and what they find in the field, they would draw on the ground. And they didn't get all of them right. They had some people were putting carrots up in the trees. So this is a wonderful opportunity for them, their peers, to help each other and ask them, where do you think carrots grow? Have you ever seen carrots growing in a tree? And so it was sparked a lot of discussion with the students I was working with. It was a lot of fun. After the intro activity, we move on to the literacy activity. This is called Harvest Time 3-step sequencing, and it is basically photo cards that introduce different parts of production, agriculture production. And I'm going to share the document camera so you can see what they might look like. So I did this with small groups. I bring the students to their table, and we talk about different crops that they enjoy eating and where those crops might have come from before they arrived on their table. And this one's making a little bit of a glare, but hopefully you can see it pretty well. So there's, I think, 6 different examples. Here's one for raisins. There's some grapes growing, starting to dry, and then the raisins. And this is where we emphasize using the words first, next, and last. So a lot of times especially when we first started, students will say, well, this is the order. Okay, done. So then we would have to say, okay, explain to me what came first, what came next, and what came last. And so then they're practicing using all of those vocabulary skills and developing their vocabulary, and also the idea of putting things in sequence. After a little bit of practice, I'll get another one out here. We would start telling a story using the cards. So instead of just saying first, next, last, which is a great way to start, I would say, tell me what happened first. And they would say, well, first the tractor had to get the field ready. Okay, what happened next? Next, the plants were starting to grow. What was the last thing that happened? The last thing is it was in the store. And I really like this is after that, we would say, well, what do you think was really the last thing? And a lot of the students would make the connection that it would go home to somebody's house and they would eat it for a meal. So we have a number of different cards. That's lettuce. We have oranges. Oh, that one's upside down. Tomatoes, carrots, apples. So the students I worked with really enjoyed putting these in order, practicing those sequencing skills, and also the language development skills that it takes to make a story out of picture cards. It was a lot of fun. The math activity for the day is called Farm Stories, talking about stories some more. This is a math activity where students are practicing their one-to-one correspondence and counting and using manipulatives to count objects. I'm going to use the document camera again. And this one comes with 2 mats. There's one for the field, and there's one for the orchard. And then there's also word problems that the teacher has access to, where they ask students to show the word problem on their farm story mat. So for example, take my field out from under there. Trying to make it lighter, but I don't know if it's going to work. Okay, so the teacher would read the story. There are 3 oranges growing on one tree, and there are 2 more growing on another tree. How many oranges are growing all together? In your small group, they'll practice counting, and then they will tell the answer, or they can write down the answer, whatever it is, whatever skills you want to focus on. There's some for subtraction. Get out the field card. You might say there were 10 strawberries. Oh gosh, 10's a lot. I'm going to take it. There were 5 strawberries growing in the field, but 3 were eaten by pests. How many strawberry plants are left in the field? And they can see that there were 2 strawberry plants left in the field. So there's addition, there's subtraction, and then there's a few multi-step problems where it's either adding multiple times or subtracting multiple times. The students, when we did it, we actually used the Unifix cubes, and the students actually there was a lot of negotiating because they wanted to use the Unifix cubes that looked like the crop that we were talking about. So they were so creative. They even were able to build little carrots that had orange on the bottom and green on top. So they really got into it. And it was fun to watch the math problems come to life through the farm story mats. Okay, the last activity for day 3 is called desktop crop. And in this activity, students are going to be creating their own little crop on their desktop. It's a science experiment, and it's a great practice for those fine motor skills and following directions, and then also for making scientific observations over time. So what you're going to start with is a lid of some sort. This is kind of like a takeout container lid that you might find at a deli section. Usually they're willing to donate a few, so you don't have to buy them, but I think you can get them at Smart and Final too. And you need a napkin, some water, and then I really like to use, these are mustard seeds. And the great thing about using these is, well, first of all, they germinate really fast. They sprout really fast. They're not very hardy to put in the ground, but they can see results quickly. The second thing is you can get it year round in the grocery store. Sometimes it's hard to find seeds at different times of year, or maybe you're doing your unit in the winter, so seeds aren't really readily available. So you can always find these, and you get a lot of them. So that's why I like to use mustard seeds. And then you need a piece of tin foil. So what you do is you take your napkin or paper towel, you instruct your students to spray it, or you can help them if they're not to be trusted with a spray bottle. And then you just set it on the lid. They don't want it to be like a pond. They want it just to be moist enough to give the seeds a little love. And then they're going to take a pinch of the mustard seeds and put them on top. And then you take the tin foil. This sometimes surprises students because they might say, I thought that plants need sunlight to grow. And you can tell them, yes, you're right. They do need sunlight. But before they get sunlight, when you plant seeds in the soil, what do you do after you're done planting them? You cover them with soil so that they have a nice, dark, damp place, warm place, hopefully, to germinate. And so you've basically just created that with this little cozy bed for your seeds. And then they can set it in a warm place. It might be the window. It doesn't need to be that bright, but it should be a little bit warm. And they will notice that in just a few days, their seeds will start to sprout. You keep it moist with your spray bottle. Over time, they can peek in there, see what's happening. And this activity comes with a science observation worksheet, very simple for those youngest learners, where they can draw a picture of what they see every time they check. And here's some suggested intervals, but you can do it whenever you have time. And then just a quick reminder of what plants need to grow at the top. So that is our desktop crop. And I have done this activity many times with many different students and even grown-ups, and it seems like everybody always likes it. So I would say this is a no-fail activity. Your kids will enjoy it a lot. Okay, we are going to go to our next song, which is foreshadowing the next day, which is on machines. So we're going to go back to Martha and Casey down in Borrego Springs, and they are going to sing for us Machines on the Farm.
Sound is on.
Hi, we're back. So yeah, this is Machines on the Farm, sung to the tune of The Farmer in the Dell. And we were just going to say that also there's a lot of like action words in here. So if you wanted to use your hands a lot with your kids about breaking up the ground or planting or shaking things, that's an option, which is cool because, you know, the kids need to move. And welcome to my classroom. Okay.
Here we go. To the tune of Farmer in the Dell, and please join in.
Machines on the farm, machines on the farm. Each machine has a special job. Machines on the farm. The plow breaks up the ground. The plow breaks up the ground. Makes the furrows rich and brown. The plow breaks up the ground. The planter sows the seeds. The planter sows the seeds. It plants them in a perfect row. The planter sows the seeds. The combine cuts the wheat. The combine cuts the wheat. It separates the grains you eat. The combine cuts the wheat. The shaker shakes the tree. The shaker shakes the tree. The nuts fall down and all around. The shaker shakes the tree. The baler makes the bales. The baler makes the bales. Gathers the hay and wraps it tight. The balers make the bales. Machines on the farm. Machines on the farm. Machines make work much easier. Machines on the farm.
And that was a fly. We're not waving at you. It's real live flies.
Just like on the farm. I hear there's flies on the farm as well. Great. Thank you, Martha and Casey. All right, we have set aside time to do Q&A, although you might not have a question right now, which is fine too. But if you do, now is a great time for you to drop your question in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your webinar screen. And Molly and I are both here. Molly, I would say, is the current teacher, so she could answer any education related questions. And I would be happy to answer any agriculture related questions. So if you have them, now would be a great time to ask. And I can answer, we have gotten a couple questions in the chat and not the Q&A. Some people were asking about the curriculum and how you'll have access to it. We will show you two ways. We'll show you a QR code at the end of the webinar that you can scan and go to the curriculum, or I should say, and we will also show it in the chat box so that everyone can see the link, because sometimes you want to have it on your computer and not on your phone. So I totally get that. One question is, will we get a list of the books you mentioned so far? Yes, you will. They won't, the books aren't included in the curriculum. The curriculum is a digital file, but there will be an outline of the recommended books for each day. Great question. Oh, that's a great question too. Yeah, you can order these cool shirts. Proud to Teach Ag shirts. If you go to our website, which is learnaboutag.org, there's, I think, a tab at the top that says store. So if you click there, under teacher resources and then store, so you can order them. It is one of our giveaways. So
you should stay till the end, because before ordering, you might win your own t-shirts. That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, okay. Here's a question. Where can we get additional info about ag products to supplement our teaching? If you want information, say, for example, you were teaching the lesson about cows and cattle and how there's different byproducts. Ag in the Classroom is a pre-K through 12 resource for teachers. So if you want to know more, we have other resources about byproducts. We have lesson plans, we have activity plans, we have student newspapers that feature byproducts. So that's just one example. If you go to our website, you can actually search. There's a little search engine, so you can put whatever it is you're teaching about, and it will pull up any extra curriculum or resources that we have.
There's also a question that says, are the songs included in the curriculum? Yes, they are. There's no recordings, so you're going to have to sing it on your own using your best teacher singing voice. Yeah, there's a reason I'm not singing them, because only TKers appreciate my singing.
I was going to say, I think most teachers get over the fact they can't sing pretty. We don't all sound as good as Casey.
Yeah, no, not at all.
The question is, do you make farm and agriculture units like this for other grade levels? Yes. In fact, this is our first TK pre-K specific unit that we've created to kind of fill that gap. But we have curriculum all the way up to grade 12. We've worked on genetic engineering or STEM curriculum, energy curriculum, all the way up to grade 12. So we really have a wide range of curriculum that we have to offer. Maybe you can address that one.
I mean, one of the questions is, do you think this unit can be adapted for other grade levels? And, you know, I would say that any teacher can have access to the units or the curriculum. And then they would just do their best, you know, professionally to go through it and say, oh, you know, for my fourth graders, I might take them out to a farm and, you might do a field trip or things like that. And I mean, I am not familiar with literature that goes over farming, but there's got to be a lot of stuff.
We have
Oh,
literature
There
lists.
you go.
Yeah. If you go to learnaboutag.org, I'm going to say that a million times. We actually have a great reads list, which includes agriculture related literature for each grade section, like lower elementary, junior high, and high school. So there are accurate ag books all the way up there.
Could also, like the math game that we had that I shared, you could potentially talk about pests and how pests can destroy crops, and you wouldn't use our teeny tiny numbers, but you might use bigger numbers for them to add, subtract, multiply, divide. So yeah.
What are some recommendations for teaching agriculture for people who don't have ag backgrounds? Like, what should we try to learn? That's a good question. Molly, you don't have an ag background, do you?
I don't. But yeah, no, I think that it's great because, like Mandy said in the beginning, we pretty much know Old MacDonald had a farm, and you know that there's other types of farms out there, but you don't know necessarily what they encompass. And so this gives us a chance to look at different kinds of farms, whether if they're raising animals or if they're raising crops. Those are different kinds of farms. When we get to day 4, we talk about some of the machines on the farm, which is really, really cool. And so, I don't have an ag background, but I liked learning about it. I liked reading about the different, different things that are used with a tractor. So.
And I think for the most part, I know we're showing the activity instructions pretty quickly, but I think for the most part, there's enough information there for you to teach your students without really having to get additional information. Would you say so?
I would say so, for sure. Yep.
So you don't have to be an expert to start. Don't be scared that you might say the wrong thing.
Yeah. And you can say the wrong thing and they'll never know. And then you can fix it later, right? You can always go back.
Do you do webinars like this for other units, I think is what it's asking. And we don't do a ton of webinars. Maybe we should start if there's a lot of requests. So we do, we have a Facebook page where we do sometimes film different activities and put those on. So if you scroll through our California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom Facebook or Instagram pages, you can find us on there, and we usually demo a couple activities at a time. So you can find us on there.
There's also something coming up on the 12th, right?
Yes, there's a garden webinar, and that one will not be on a specific curriculum, but kind of on a wide range of garden related resources that we have. So lots of different grade levels up to grade 8, and all hands-on learning, just like these are. Someone says, I'm in another state. Do other states have this type of resource? Yes, they do. In fact, every state has an ag in the classroom. And if you're thinking about just this resource in general, we distribute to any teacher, especially now that they're available electronically. So anyone, wherever they are, anywhere in the world, can download our resources and use them at no cost. If you wanted a hard copy of some of our resources, you could go to our website, and that tab that's teaching resources at the top. If you click down on that, there are some hard copies that you can order, and we only ship those for free to California teachers. So if you're like, man, I like having things in my hand and I don't want to print them, go and check it out. We have a lot of things listed. We don't yet have Life on the Farm. It's hot off the press, so it's not on there yet, but there are many other resources available. I wanted to add one other resource for you because, like I said, we are one ag in the classroom out of one for every state. So we represent a kind of a small portion of the National Agriculture in the Classroom organization. If a teacher wants to see what else is out there and they don't want to have to go to like Texas Ag in the Classroom and Florida Ag in the Classroom and visit every site, we actually have a database where we compile all of our resources for the whole country. And that's called the National Ag in the Classroom Organization Matrix. I think if you search Matrix and put in that National Ag in the Classroom, it should come up. And like I said, we have a searchable database on our website, and they have one that's like has a lot in it. So that's a great place to start if you want to start teaching more agriculture. And after you teach life on the farm, you have a hunger for a little bit more. Go to the National Ag in the Classroom Matrix, and that will be a wealth of information for you.
Hello again, everybody. Hopefully you were able to take a nice little break, prep some dinner, go potty. I can say that because I teach TK. All right. Thank you so much to Martha and Casey who sang our Machines on the Farm song. It was really awesome. And Casey, you have a beautiful voice. All right, so we are going to be talking on day 4. Our big question is, how do machines help on the farm? So, oh yeah, and one of the questions was, do you get the songs? And you get the songs, which will be great. So one of the books that we found is a super cute little book called Tremendous Tractors. And one of the things I really like about it is that it's a rhyming book. You know, you love rhyming. And not only that, but it also talks about all the different things that tractors pull. It also talks about the tires, and, you know, my TKers love to talk about tires and anything monster and gigantic, and tractors really fit that bill. So I'm just going to read you the first 2 pages. Tremendous chuggy tractors, so sturdy and so strong, hitching up to farm machines and pulling them along. So it goes through, and they talk about the tires and the tire tread, how it works on the farmland, which isn't exactly, the tires specifically are helpful because farmland isn't exactly flat. It's not like all of the roads that we go on. So it keeps them high up above the ground. And then it has a plow. It has the harrow. See, I don't know much about ag, but now I get to read this cool book and find out what a harrow is and what it does. Let's see. There's a roller, which looks pretty cool. There's the seed drill that has a hopper. Then when the hay is fully grown, then the mower comes. And then there's a baler that comes and scoops up the dry grass. All right. If the crop's a grain crop, then a combine does the job. All right. And then it goes through and it talks about all those little tractor parts in the back. So this is a super cool book. Even if you, you know, this wouldn't be the only time of the year I would use this. I would probably pull this out. It's just so fun. So with that, we also have our vocabulary development cards. So just like in our Tremendous Tractors book, we have a plow, so they can see a real life plow or the picture of one. The hopper, the thresh, the tire, some furrows, and a bale, the bale of hay. So those are really some really nice cards that you guys can print out and show to your class. All right, now this is what I'm going to do. I am going to, we're going to do, our literacy activity is an alphabet plowing activity. And so we've got teeny tiny tractors, and we have some letter formation cards. And we're going to go to the document camera so you can see our little setup. Oh, good, it worked. All right. So I would put some soil in trays for students. And then I don't know about you in your classroom, but we have quite a few little mini tractors. If you don't have tractors, little deal, you can just use cars and they can use their imagination and pretend that they're tractors. Or you could use Unifix cubes, green Unifix cubes or red Unifix cubes to represent the tractors. There's, you know, a wealth of imagination that they can use. And they'll pull out their cards. Hopefully you can see that. I've got the letter F, and it shows how to form the letters. So straight down, then jump up to 2 and go across and across. So we'll do that with my tractor. I'll just go down, it's pushing the dirt, and across and across. And I've got the letter F. It's a little hard to see, but you hopefully get the idea. So that is, this is a super popular activity. Any sensory, any opportunities for sensory play is great. Some of your students who maybe don't like to have their hands dirty might be more willing to get their hands dirty because it's got tractors and it's kind of cool. Of course, I had to do this one. I hate getting my hands dirty, which is really weird for a TK teacher to say, but I don't like dirt or sand on my hands. All right. All right, the next activity is our math activity, and it's a game called Tractor Squeeze. And as you can see in the picture, it's 2 girls, and they are showing there's a number line on the board. Now, what I would recommend for pre-K and TK and even kindergarten initially is to do it on the board. So as the teacher, you are choosing the number that is the mystery number. You could even, actually, what you could do is you could write your mystery number and then have a magnet on your tractor so it's hidden behind the tractor. And they would have to guess your number. So I'm going to go, you would do that on the board a few times. And then after that, they would get their own number line. So I'm going to try to put this on the document camera again. Oh, and you get 2 awesome tractors. All right. Thanks, Mandy. Okay, there we go. We've got this. Okay. So I would start my tractors on the sides. So you don't want to cover up the 0 or the 10. And then let's say my number was 3. So I would say, all right, Josias, what number would you like to pick? And Josias might say, oh, I would like to pick number 8. And I would take my red tractor and I would go vroom, vroom, vroom. And I would cover up my 8. I'd say it's not 8, but that was a really good guess. So look at all my choices. Now you could choose 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. And then I would say, choose 8, 9, or 10. No, you can't choose 8, 9, or 10, but you can choose any of these numbers. And then I might say, okay, Emily, you're raising a quiet hand. What number do you think it is? And she would say, number 2. And I would say, oh, let's see, vroom, vroom, vroom. And it would go to number 2. And I would say, oh, that's a great guess, Emily, but it's not number 2. And then I would have another student ask or answer, give us an answer what they think it might be. And maybe they chose number 5. And so you would just keep getting your tractors closer until they've got number 3. And if they guess it, then you could have a little, you could have a tractor party. I don't know what you might want to do with that, but that's what you would want to do. And you can cheer. They've got your, they guessed your magic number. So that's the fun of Tractor Squeeze. So like I said, you would start it off like that, and then you would give it to them in pairs. So one of them would get to choose the number that is the mystery number. They could write it down on a whiteboard. Usually that helps prevent some of the cheating because they don't want their friends to guess really quickly, but they'll write it down on the whiteboard. And then they would get to move the tractors, which is super fun for them. All right. And finally, the last thing is build your own tractor. All right. So you'll get a template, and it says it's got pieces, and it says what to print on what color. And what I would do, so it's less important that it looks like a tractor and more important that they get a chance to do the art and craft. And so it'll give them some cutting skills. They'll have to cut curves and straight lines, and that's great. You're welcome to help those students who need a little extra assistance, especially with the curved lines. They should be able to do the straight lines, hopefully. But some of the curves are kind of tricky. So you could give it to them, and then maybe they could choose what kind of paper they would want to put their tractor on. They might want a brown background, like they're in a dirt field and they're plowing something, or they might want a bright blue background because they're looking out at their tractor, and the sky is the background. They would get to choose, and then they would get to put together their tractor. So like I said, it's not so important that it's this perfect product at the end, but that they get to do the process of the art and the cutting and the gluing. And some of them will turn out amazing. They'll turn out just like this, and some of them will turn out different. And it'll be really, really cute anyway. It's going to be cute regardless. So these would be great to put up in your classroom afterwards, and you could do it for open house even. So. All right. Now we are going to watch a video on Tommy's tomato farm. And so I hope you guys really enjoy learning a little bit about life on a tomato farm.
Have you ever wondered where your salsa or pasta sauce comes from, or your ketchup comes from? Tomatoes, right? Tomatoes look like this, but this is actually our tomato field, and we're going to show you how it starts. These are baby tomato plants that we're planting today. My name's Tommy Bottoms, and I'm a tomato farmer. I'm going to show you how we plant tomatoes. The process of growing a tomato is they're going to put a seed in a tray and they're going to grow it. And when that seed is about 9 inches tall, about that tall, 7 to 9 inches tall, they're going to bring them in these big boxes, in the white boxes, and those boxes are going to go on the back of a transplanter. The people who you see on the back are taking those trays, placing those trays on each of the individual planting units, and then it automatically uses these fingers, or kind of spears, and spears these transplants, picks them up, lays them on a belt. That belt then moves them and conveys them or carries them down towards the ground. While at the same time, in the ground, there's what we call a planting shoe. We'll open the ground up. It will carefully turn that plant and place it in there, while at the same time there's water being put there, and then it will close behind that plant to kind of seal that up, just like a bed, like you go to sleep at night, seal it up really good, and it says, okay, little tomato transplant, now you're gonna go out in the world and grow. So all plants, whether it be tomato plants or peppers or trees or whatever, need 3 basic things, right? They need soil, which we've got a lot of, and great soil. We have water, which is a precious resource that we try to use as efficiently as possible. And we need sunlight, which is beautiful right now. So with those 3, the combination of those 3 pieces, we can grow beautiful tomato plants. We will plant them in the spring. We'll put them in the soil. We'll give them some water and use the sunshine all summer long. And then about 130 to 140 days later, those tomatoes will have tomatoes, and they'll be turned from green to red, and then we'll come through and harvest them. And we'll put them in the big trucks that you see going down the highways, and then they will turn into those products, those awesome pizzas and pastas and ketchups, whatever you like. That's what they'll turn into. So in California, in the Sacramento Valley, we are really good at growing tomatoes. We have these really warm days. Some would call it hot, but it's very hot, warm days. And we also have these cool nights, and that's critical to be able to grow a good tomato. And so, and they're long days, and it's dry. We don't get a lot of rain, which helps reduce the diseases and pests in the summertime. And then we can grow tomatoes for during the summer, and anywhere starting in March and April and ending in September, October. Okay, in terms of numbers, how many tomatoes will be produced here? Well, in this 60-acre field, which is about 50 football fields, there are going to be about 500,000 tomato plants planted, and which is going to equate to about 10 to 15 million individual tomatoes. So 10 to 15 million of these guys, which when we harvest them, and you see those trucks, that's about 140 trucks. And so that are going to come off this 60-acre field. So that's a lot of tomatoes, but you like ketchup, and that's a lot of ketchup. So that's good for everyone.
All right, that was an exciting trip to the tomato farm. My kids love all things tomato related, so hopefully your students will enjoy seeing the technology behind it and how farmers make investments in these specialized machines for the special crops that they like to grow. So I hope you enjoy sharing that with your students. We got another question about how to access the videos. In the lesson, there is all the videos are included in the unit, and there's a QR code. So if you scan the QR code, you can access them on YouTube, where they're listed under a like a playlist. So you can find them there. All right, I get to start on our very last day, day 5, which kind of wraps it all up. And the theme is thank you, farmers. And we're asking, the big question is, how do farmers help our community? Oh, and there's the QR code. You can see an example of what it looks like there. And so even though we showed you the videos throughout the unit, and you can choose to do it that way in your classroom too, we've connected them to the last unit because the theme is saying thank you for the role that farmers play in our community. I love this book. It's called Right This Very Minute. It's a relatively new book, a table to farm book about food and farming. And what it does is it takes you through the life of a typical child and each of the meals that they eat, and then where the food on their plate comes from. So for example, at the breakfast table, they might be eating pancakes with syrup, and it actually talks about where that syrup comes from, the orange juice that's squeezed, the wheat that is used to create the flour and the pancakes. And then finally, this is really interesting for us Californians because we don't have this here, but the maple farms and how they're collecting syrup for our tables. So it takes you through every single meal from breakfast to dessert and introduces readers to each of the people, or each person, I should say, behind the food. Right this very minute. And the book ends with the perfect tie-in to the theme for the day. It says, next time you eat your breakfast, snack, lunch, dinner, or dessert, remember that somewhere right this very minute, there's a farmer to thank for your delicious food. And so great way to help students start thinking about saying thank you to the farmers. As with every unit, there's our vocab cards for the day. Got some more. There's pollination, frost, nutrients, graze. This book really summarizes all types of agriculture. So it brings all of these in. Sap, and you can see it collecting there. Soil sensors, that word is introduced, and we thought that'd be an important one to talk about, how farmers are carefully monitoring their soil to make sure they don't put too much water or not enough water. So those are the vocab cards for that day. And I would suggest showing those videos to your students too, maybe one at the beginning of the day and one at the end of the day to inspire them to be thankful for the food that's grown. Next, we're moving on to our literacy activity, which is a shared writing activity, writing a thank you letter to a farmer. And how we've suggested starting this lesson is doing group writing, where all students are contributing, giving their ideas, and the teacher can write those ideas down. And then the next step would be taking those ideas and putting them in a letter form. So maybe the class chooses what kind of farmer to thank, and then writing a letter about the food that they grow, how the students enjoy eating that food, and how their lives are better because of it. After you've done that as a class and all those ideas have been generated, I'm sure your students will be chomping at the bit to sit down and write their own, either with the help of a grown-up or in the case of my kindergartner, she wrote this one. So there's a template included in the unit that's fill in the blank. So it's not too overwhelming for younger learners, but if you have even younger than kindergarten, you could be filling in the blanks with small groups and then they draw the picture. So this one says, "Dear farmer, our class has been learning about farmers. We have learned that farmers are kind and drive tractors." The machine unit, I think, or lesson was really made an impact here. "My favorite crop is tomatoes because they are yummy. Thank you for helping our community." And they get to sign it. And what would be really fun is if you have a farmer in your community, if you were to put all of your letters together and send them to that farmer, I'm sure they would be so encouraged by your students appreciating the food that they get to eat. If you don't know a farmer, we've included our contact information in the unit. You can email us and we will do our best to connect you with someone who will appreciate the letters that your students write. Great way to bring it to life and to connect it to real people behind the food. So I hope your students enjoy doing that one. The next activity is our math activity. And I have to say, maybe out of the whole unit, this one is the one I'm most excited about because it started with this really big idea of how can we help students understand the value of agriculture in our state, because it's huge and they're little. So how do you bridge that gap? So we came up with an activity called California Agriculture Grab and Graph. And this is great practice for them, an intro to graphing activity where they can represent data. They actually don't have to count to begin with. They'll grab tiles one by one and record them on their bar graph. But it also helps them to compare things. So they're going to be comparing the top 10 commodities grown in California to see which one is the most and which one's the least. So let me show you what it looks like. This is where they'll be recording, and it's in billions of dollars. And I don't think it's necessary for students to totally understand how much a billion is. You can just tell them it's a lot. And these at the bottom are the top 10 commodities grown in our state. I wonder which one is number one. There's some for you to look at. So maybe you can be guessing that now in your mind, which one's number one. And then what you do to make this activity come to life is you put the tiles that are included in the unit that represent each of the squares inside of a bag. And I would suggest engaging the whole class. You can walk around and have students take turns reaching in, looking at the tile that they pulled. This one says walnuts. And it's funny, when we pulled this one, I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Almonds, pistachios, peanuts." No, nobody guessed walnuts. So it's a great way for them to learn, what does a walnut really look like in its shell? And then once you have walnuts, you can take your bar graph and they're going to color in the square above walnuts. And I just remind them to keep stacking up in a bar graph to start at the bottom. And then you're building it just like a tower of blocks, which they're all pretty familiar with. And if you pull out every tile in this bag, you will have the accurate bar graph for the economics of agriculture in the entire state. So, I mean, that's a big thing for kids to learn. So the answer is, if you guessed dairy products is the number one commodity that we produce here in California. And they will find that out as they make their graph. So a really fun and accurate activity around our California agriculture economy. All right. And then the very last kind of unit review that comes with this is called a farm match scavenger hunt. And this is really where they get to show what they know. They're thinking critically, but they're also classifying things, which is a great skill to start practicing now. So how this activity works is that when the students are out at recess or out at break or at lunch, you are going to hide these little cards around the room. So when they come back, you're going to have groups. So however many groups you typically have, whether it's 6 or 7, you're going to put 6 or 7 little broccolis. You're going to print them and you're going to tape them together at one place in the room, and that will be your broccoli farm. Then you're going to do the same for tomatoes and almonds and all of the different crops that they're going to be looking for. And then when students come back in, you're going to tell them let's pretend like our classroom is a community. And in our community, we have a number of different farms. There's 15 included. You can do more or less depending on how much time you have. And you say, we are going to send one representative from our group at a time out to try to find one of the farms in our community. When they find the farm, they're going to take it off the wall or the desk or wherever it's hidden, and they're going to bring it back to our group. Once they bring it back to our group, we are going to glue or tape it onto this worksheet that tells us where that crop is grown. Is it grown in a field? Is it grown in an orchard? Can you find it in a barn? Where do we find these different crops? And then after that student, and with their group's help, puts it in the right place or what they think is the right place, they will send out another person from their group to go find the next farm. Oh, this is an almond farm where they grow almonds. So once they find the almond farm, they're going to take their group's card, bring it back to the worksheet, and put it in the right place. What I really like about this activity is that even though there are some clear answers, like we do find lettuce in a field not growing on trees, there are some that are a little bit on the gray area. So for example, down here you can see that there's a cow in the barn, and you can ask students, or maybe they come up with this on their own, where else might we find a cow? Well, sometimes we see them grazing in a pasture, so they might put it up here in the hills, and we can talk about that's not wrong. That's just a different way they're looking at it. So there's lots of different correct answers to do this summary worksheet, but hopefully it will be them showing what they've learned and what they know about California agriculture and farms by the end of the unit. If you want more of what you're seeing, please make sure you go to our website, learnaboutag.org. That's where you'll find many, many resources just as wonderful as the one we shared with you today. And it's all free, and it's just us trying to support teachers like you. So please go there and check that out. And otherwise, I think we can say goodbye and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for coming.